Esther, can you hear us? We can hear you. Speak up.
That's good.
In support of struggling workers. Porque la unión es la fuerza. When the strike began, the farm workers en Coachella. Empezó la huelga, los campesinos en Coachella. Let's get organized, and in the letter they congregated. Se dijeron organizarnos, y para el nombre no pena, que te boycott the Jollibee Giant. Let's stop. Support the district workers. For job justice and environment. From San Antonio to San Francisco, where Sunida has been said. Don't buy doctors and Levi jeans. And stop the free trade agreement. Hoy doctors y Levi jeans. Y a todo el comercio que te quedan, que viva la mujer obrera, que te quedan. Queremos justice for janitors. We say chale concurs. And boycott hotels.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cafecito con Esther. We want to make sure that everybody is on. It looks like we have actually quite a good group of folks. So I'm going to, we're going to get started. Can you guys hear me? Everybody hear me? Perfect. Okay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Rigo Valdez, and I'm president of the United Latinos of the UFCW. That great story was by Dr. Loco, Rockin' Jalapeño Band. Hola, mi nombre es Rigo Valdez. Soy presidente de los Latinos Unidos. Esther, you may need to mute your computer because you're also on with your phone. And that will stop the backfeed. Thanks. All right. Okay. Si usted quiere escuchar este taller en español, por favor, oprima español en el menú de opciones que aparece abajo de la pantalla junto al icono del micrófono, vídeo y chat. Tenemos a Alejandra Marroquín y a Alexia Beitia en la línea en español apoyándonos el día de hoy con interpretación. Y Ale quiere compartir un mensaje de Language Equity. Ale?
Thank you, Rigo. Hi, it's my pleasure to introduce myself and my compañera here, Alexia Beitia. And we together form part of Antena Los Angeles Interpretation Translation Collective here in LA. And what we want to share with you is the basic idea of language justice. And that's the right that everyone has to understand, speak, and be understood in the language that they feel most comfortable in. What we're doing right now is consecutive interpretation, but we will be starting simultaneous interpretation soon. And we also want to remind everyone that the creation of a bilingual space is the shared responsibility of everyone. So at any moment in time, if you see one of us, whoever happens to be interpreting, doing this motion, you all can do it with me or panelists, that's the motion that we need the speaker at that moment to slow down. If we're having technical issues, we can't hear you, and we need you to speak up, the motion for that is this. Also, please be in touch with Clara, who will be your IT person if at any moment in time you're having any issues with your technology or can't hear us. Also, we want to ask that one person speak at a time because with Zoom, if multiple people are speaking at the same time, you actually cancel each other out. We also want to recognize that our effort to break through gender binaries is in full effect. And so in Spanish, you will hear us using the ed versus the a or the o form. And one quick thing, we want to recognize that here in Los Angeles, we find ourselves in Tongva land. And so thank you to our ancestors. And with that, I'll pass it on to Alexia, who will do the interpretation in Spanish.
Hola, hola, buenas tardes. Gracias, Rigo. Mi nombre es Alejandra. Aquí conmigo está mi compañera Alexia. Es un placer presentarnos. Somos parte de una colectiva de justicia del lenguaje, interpretación y traducción llamada Antena Los Ángeles. Primero queremos compartir lo que es la justicia del lenguaje, que es el derecho básico que todos tenemos de comunicarnos, entender y ser entendidos en nuestros idiomas. Lo que estamos haciendo ahorita es interpretación consecutiva, pero vamos a empezar a hacer simultáneo en un segundo. Solamente también un recordatorio que la creación de los espacios bilingües y multilingües es responsabilidad de todas las personas, por lo que les pedimos pasos concretos para que nos ayuden con eso. Si nos ven haciendo este gesto con las manos, las personas que estén hablando, los presentadores, significa que hablen más lento para poder interpretar. Si nos ven haciendo esto, es que hablen un poco más fuerte porque no los escuchamos o tienen algún problema con la tecnología. Si no escuchan o tienen problemas con la interpretación, háganle saber a Clara, va a ser su persona de IT o de ayuda con tecnología el día de hoy. Pedimos que una persona hable a la vez, ya que en Zoom, si empiezan a hablar al mismo tiempo, se cancela y no podemos escuchar para nada. El último recordatorio es que estamos tratando de irrumpir con el binario de género, por lo que las personas escuchándonos en español, si de repente nos escuchan con la terminación E en lugar de A u O, no es un error de pronunciación, pero un esfuerzo súper consciente para retar el binario de género. Y por lo pronto eso es todo. Muchas gracias.
Well, thank you, Ale and Alexia. Ahora puede oprimir el icono español para poder escuchar este taller en español. Permítanos un momentito mientras que podemos hacer eso. Ale, te voy a pasar la habilidad de ser anfitriona para que puedas hacer eso. So while Ale sets up the Spanish interpretation, we'll take a momentary pause. Very good. And in the meanwhile, if you'd like to put your name, you don't have to actually put your name, just your local number and the city that you're from in the chat. That way Esther can see who all is here and where you're from. Okay, it looks like our interpretation is set up. Parece que ya está lista la interpretación. Escoja inglés o español en el icono de interpretación. So choose English or Spanish in the icon. Welcome everyone to our third webinar of Voces Latinas series. Today it is my honor to welcome our resilient Esther Lopez. But before handing it off, we would be remiss if we didn't dedicate some time to the memory of Congressman John Lewis. He lived by what we call his simple philosophy. He said, if you see something that is not fair, not just, say something, do something, get in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble. In 2003, I got on a bus along with some of you, along with migrants and TPS holders, refugees, undocumented workers, labor leaders, community activists, and we rode to Washington, D.C. in the Immigrant Worker Freedom Rides. We were honored by the legacy of those before us who rode the buses from DC to the South to fight racism and segregation. We rode to DC in a similar spirit to bring justice and immigrant communities. We put our livelihoods at stake. When we arrived in DC, we were welcomed by crowds and crowds of people who, like us, believed that immigrant workers deserve justice, deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. Among them, Congressman John Lewis. He spoke to us and left us with the message that, like the original Freedom Riders 42 years before, that we were going to win because we were right. We are right. The fight for immigrant workers is not over. The fight for racial justice that John Lewis stood for is not over. But we know that we will win because we are right. We stand on the shoulders of giants like Congressman John Lewis, who wholeheartedly believed that we were on the path of virtue and justice. John Lewis fought to put an end to racial discrimination, and yet are witnessing the government's assault on peaceful protesters who chant Black Lives Matter, and are seeing Black men die in the hands of police, refugee kids still in cages or stocked away in hotel rooms being denied legal help. This is our battle. As labor leaders, we need to honor Congressman Lewis' life by getting in good trouble, in necessary trouble. In the sentiment of the, in this sentiment, the United Latinos reiterates our commitment to the Black Lives Matter movement. I will take a few minutes to read the statement, which is available through our website. First and foremost, the United Latinos of the UFCW extends our most sincerest condolences to the friends and family of George Floyd. As a labor organization, we cannot remain silent regarding the systemic violence and racism against Black people in the United States. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow, Black Lives Matter. The United Latinos of the UFCW stand in solidarity with everyone who is outraged and voicing their stand in the streets. From Minneapolis and throughout the US, your unrest, frustration, and anger is felt. You are heard. We join our outcry for justice for George Floyd, justice for Black and brown lives lost in the hands of police brutality, justice for Black and brown lives lost in detention centers. Racism, white supremacy plague our system and are deeply rooted in our socioeconomic way of life. Today, we join the labor movement, community organizations in calling for justice for George Floyd. The police have terrorized Black and brown working people for hundreds of years. We are frustrated that we keep finding ourselves in this position and are angry that justice seems so far out of reach. This frustration has manifested in protest, outrage throughout the United States. Our media has gone from news reports on the staggering numbers of COVID-19 deaths to scenes of burning buildings and hundreds of people chanting, "I can't breathe." Both issues are related and exemplify the embedded racism in our system. The majority of people who are dying from COVID-19 were disproportionately African American. We need to understand that this is not about a few officers, but about an institutional racism that plagues our society. White supremacy is a widespreading disease that needs to be eradicated. As Latinx, we need to combat anti-Blackness in our communities. Latinos are diverse and many of our members are Afro-Latinx. Anti-Blackness in Latino communities is rampant. As labor organizers, we have seen management use race as a divider to wither down our organizing campaigns. We need to show a united front in the face of discrimination and racism. We need to confront our own biases and fight together to dismantle white supremacy. As the United Latinos of the UFCW, we keep fighting for racial and economic justice by building together with other constituency groups and local unions. We need to keep our membership educated about the issues relating to racial justice, criminal justice. After all, we need to be the change that we want to see start in us. Together, we must take collective action to dismantle institutions that enable acts of violence against Black and Brown communities to keep happening. Again, our hearts go out to the family and friends of George Floyd and to those families and communities whose lives have been impacted by police brutality and immigration enforcement agencies. We shall overcome. Thank you for listening. We want to remind everyone that our webinars are recorded and can be accessed through our website and Facebook. Now, it is my honor to welcome Esther Lopez, a fierce Latina who has stood by this organization and supported us for many years. Her guidance has made the United Latinos grow and create true impact within our membership and the Latino community. Throughout her career, Esther has been a champion of the rights of all workers. She directed the Civil Rights and Community Action Department for nearly a decade before she became the first woman to serve as International Secretary Treasurer of the UFCW. Prior to the UFCW, she served as Deputy Chief of Staff in the Governor's Office in Illinois. She worked in the Field Mobilization Department of the AFL-CIO, where she led the Immigrant Worker Freedom Ride. Many of us know her in the front lines of civil and human rights and her work to defend immigrant and refugee workers. She is a teacher at heart. Years of teaching in the Mexican communities of Chicago. She would remind us often that a good teacher is a good organizer, and a good organizer is a good teacher. For many of us, Esther is the conscience in our union. Her voice was strong and sure against discrimination and racism. So join me in welcoming Esther Lopez.
Thank you, Rigo. Thank you for your attention to language justice. It says a lot about who we are in the United Latinos. As a bilingual person, let me apologize in advance to the interpreters. I'll do my best to speak in English, but sometimes se sale en español. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, and thank you, United Latinos, for inviting me to share space with you. If I can begin with a personal point of privilege, I need to take a minute to say thank you for the honor and the privilege of working with you. You were and are the source of inspiration for me. I will be eternally grateful for the time and the space that we shared together. I think about you every day as you hold the front line for some of the most vulnerable and exploited workers. I can imagine the challenges that you face. For that, hermanas y hermanos, mil gracias. I propose today that we begin with a courageous conversation around two areas: racial justice and Latino leadership, and building power, building infrastructure, building capacity in our workplaces and in our communities. I say begin because I recognize that they are complex topics, and I submit to you that an analysis on racial justice requires a long and steady discipline. And I say with deep reflection, because we need to challenge ourselves to be courageous learners, to be uncomfortable with the uncomfortable, and to make others uncomfortable. My analysis as we proceed is open to correction, to critique, to debate, in hopes that together we can develop a strategic framework that strengthens our movement to oppose white supremacy and the power to dismantle the systems, the structures, the policies and protocols that sustain it. It is my hope that we can develop a vision for a just society that affords every person true respect, infinite dignity, and genuine equity and equality. That we can develop strategies and a plan towards that goal with the people power we need to make that change. And for context, sisters and brothers, let me share with you my definition of white supremacy. It's an ideology that European colonizers and settlers are biologically and intellectually superior, that they are God's chosen people to rule the world and reap all benefits. And as such, they are justified to maintain their superior position, employing any and all methods necessary to dominate all others. The Black Lives Matters movement has ripped the bandages that have covered centuries of wounds inflicted upon the African American people in the U.S. It has forced the country like at no other point in my lifetime to confront and reckon with the true historical origins of this country's history of genocide, slavery, and colonization. No longer is it a conversation in a college classroom or the living room of a few woke. It's right smack in front of our faces. And for us in the Latino community, the question is, how do we lead in this moment? What foundation are we staking our future in? I believe our future depends on the actions we take today. That we must be in the boldest and strongest terms, standing in full unity with the Black Lives Matter movement. That there is no neutrality, no place to hide, and no place to run. Some call for solidarity, and I say we must do much better than that. We must stand in struggle, in unity, in the streets and in our workplace. Not merely another statement, picture, or post on your social media platform. It is a movement against white supremacy, and we can't fake it. We must be all in. Some will claim indifference, claim that this is not about us. And to you I say, be honest. Admit that you're comfortable with white supremacy and racism. Your claim of indifference no longer gives you cover. As Latinos, we must, with the utmost clarity and absolute force, stand with, stand by, and stand strong against the racist system that has brutalized the lives of African Americans. We must grieve for the lives lost, be horrified and enraged for the lives destroyed, be honored for the opportunity to resist in unity, humbled to accept leadership, and be at the ready to share our skills, our talents, and our resources. And to do so requires us to resist the temptation of oppression Olympics. We know and understand that the Latino community is in a world of hurt. The divisions that are perpetrated by the white supremacist system are well played. And for too long, corporate greed, the academic and policy elite, the politicians have counted on our division, fueling competition, mistrust, and resentment. We are being played, sisters and brothers, mientras ellos comen con las dos manos. We must commit ourselves to be intentional about our leadership, invest our time, our intellect, and our resources to building authentic relationships with the African American community, with African American workers, inside the labor movement and outside in the broader community. We must commit ourselves to develop thought partners, develop partnerships with the African American voices that sharpen our strategies, critique our plans, and provide the platform that can lead to joint work. We must be intolerant of being used to exclude African American workers, leaders, or staff. We must be brave and ask the hard questions, and we must refuse if there is even an inkling that we are being used for the purpose of checking the diversity box. Let us not make it convenient for them to check the box. We must recognize and call out the hyper-celebration of white women at the exclusion of women of color, to drown out the voices of women of color in the name of gender diversity. We must confront our anti-Blackness internally, have those difficult conversations, confront our families, our members, friends, and neighbors. Be intolerant of racism in our home, in our work, in our union. More importantly, we must examine our own practices and behaviors and model what it is we wish to see. This does not mean that we abandon the Latino front. It does not in any shape, form, or form deny or diminish racism and discrimination faced by our community. It is a strategic and conscious alignment with the anti-racist movement being led by the African American community. What I have laid out is extremely difficult. The labor movement's history of racism, inflexible structures, white male-dominated culture, constitutions, and bylaws make that much more of a challenge. And still I say, we join without hesitation, con todo corazón, a fight for dignity, respect for the African American community, that we join the amazing warriors in the Black Lives Matter movement who are fighting to free us all. Let me stop there, Rigo. I really would like to hear a little feedback from that. That's a lot. And I know that we have asked Jean and Joseph to talk a little bit about what challenges they may be facing in building a unified movement with the Black Lives Matter movement. So let me stop there and hear from Jean and Joseph.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. So in order to do that, Alejandra, you need to click on the hamburger screen for me and give me back my host privileges. Next to the mute, the 3 dots is the hamburger. Sorry, I had to give her the host privileges so that she could start the interpretation. And now we need them back to bring on our speakers. Ale, did you find it? We're all new. This is our new reality, is to do things virtually. So we're all learning all at the same time. So Ale, what you want to do is hover over the upper right-hand corner of my picture, right? And then there are 3 dots. You click on the 3 dots and then it says make host. Perfect. Thank you so much, Ale. Appreciate that. And now I will bring on Jean Tong onto the panel. Jean, you've been promoted to the panel. And then Brother Joseph Dorismond, I'm about to bring you up to the panel by request of our guest, Esther Lopez. Jean, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Oh, Jean, it's very nice to see you. You're so close and yet so
Yes.
far away. And Joseph. Joseph, you're on mute. If you
I'm here. I'm here.
Awesome. And
There we go.
oh, and we get to see you. Hello,
Finally.
welcome.
So good to see you all. My sister Esther.
All right, Esther.
Awesome. There you go. So excited. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good.
So Jean,
Rigo, you on mute.
Oh, I was just about to say, Esther, take it away, and she did.
Jean, let's hear a little bit from you. I mean, I laid out a lot of stuff there, and you know, the challenges that you faced, and I work pretty closely with you, Joseph, and I know that that together we faced many challenges, but in the context of this moment, what are the challenges you're facing as you, and we have un poquito, but this is the time for good, honest conversations.
Correct.
Correct.
Why don't we hear let's hear from Jean, and then we'll hear from Joseph.
Sounds good. First of all, so good to see you, Esther, and everyone. And I made a cafecito.
I did too.
So, you know, when we started, you know, facing kind of what the pandemic means, well, at first I should share with folks a little bit. So I'm a union representative with Local 770, and my jurisdiction is in Oxnard area, Camarillo. So some conservative, some not so conservative, but very people of color heavy area in Southern California. And with the pandemic, you know, it was very heavy. The anxiety that people go to work with every single day. So when George Floyd's murder happened, it was kind of the last straw that broke the camel's back. And I remember around Juneteenth, I decided actually, because of some of the conversation I was having with workers around Black Lives Matter, and you know, the uprising that was happening all around us, and some of the stores getting shut down, and people were fearful, and there was some conversation happening. And, you know, some workers were very resentful, right, of the looters, right, as they would call them, because they felt like their jobs were on the line and that they were being attacked. And I remember with some of my activists and shop stewards, we started a little action where we went around, we got these Black Lives Matter buttons from the union, and we buttoned everybody up in the store. And it was, you know, a really great show of solidarity, but what it started was a conversation. And, you know, I just have to say, like, you know, when you were talking about just this history of our struggles and how intertwined all these different immigrants and LGBTQ and you know, African Americans and refugees, how intertwined our struggles are. I just, you know, I think one of my biggest challenge is that, you know, having these honest conversations with workers are not easy, but it have to start with us. Because if us union representatives or our union leaders are not willing to have these conversations, then we're not having it with the workers, right? So we have sometimes still a lot of resistance in our union because maybe folks fear that more conservative members might be negative about what we're doing. Like when we were doing the UCAN workshop, some workers were like, I don't support the union, supporting immigrants, why are we doing this? But we have to educate workers. So, you know, I just want to hear kind of like what you think about what I said, right? Because I have workers who definitely have said to me, Jean, I see people come in and they steal all the time. I support that. I support that we should, you know, chase them out of the store. And, you know, I have to have this conversation with them and say, listen, like, you know, we don't know where people come from. And for someone to come in and steal like bread and water and whatnot, But the company, meanwhile, is stealing money out left and right from you, you know? So we have to channel anger somehow differently.
Well, I guess what I would say, Jean, is that it's my experience that in this time, a lot of issues get conflated. And when we don't talk about hard issues, we don't practice, we don't learn. When we never talk about race and racism with our members, how else do we learn? I mean, you and I learned by making mistakes. But then to be able to know that there's space to talk about many different issues so that we don't have to conflate everything into one color. And that is precisely what happens when our folks have such limited opportunity to think about, well, what does this mean? What does it mean that Black men are getting killed by the police? And what does it mean that community residents have to come into our stores and steal bread and water? How much are our bosses making anyway? What? And so if we don't create the spaces for those conversations to happen, then the little bit that we do, we try to conflate everything into one. So I think we need to now be sharper about saying, let's talk about this right now. And yes, we can talk about other things, but we can't talk about stealing and George Floyd's murder in the same sentence. Mm-hmm. It's not fair, and it's not right.
Exactly.
And as long as we don't create those opportunities for our members to explore deeply, and that happens because we never create those opportunities for that to happen. You created an opportunity for that to happen. You made that happen. And we've got to create much more of those moments for that to happen. Joseph, does that make sense?
Yes, yes. Esther, thank you very much. It's such an honor to see you. And I want to take this opportunity to thank you for everything you've done for me personally. And the time we spent together working, traveling all over U.S., helping people. You know, you taught me a lot, and thank you, thank you. Your work continues. Okay. Well, let me say this first. I'm from Haiti, and moving to America, it was the idea of all of us as immigrants coming to this great country and to live a better life and being happy. I'll tell you the first thing I found was when I went to Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama, with Stuart Applebaum and Charles Hall Sr. To a board meeting with Henry Jenkins, who passed away. And this African-American lady stood up and said, we don't want these people in this country because they're here to steal our job. And and I was there and I looked around. I said, oh, wait a minute. Now she was talking about me. And then Stuart had to stand up and telling about the Jews coming to this country. And then Charles Hall Sr., who's an African-American guy, had to stand up and said, well, listen, we didn't just get up and come here. We were forced to come to this country. Therefore, this country doesn't belong to me, it doesn't belong to you, it doesn't belong to Stuart. So we all are immigrants in this country. But there's been a big change now in Alabama. You see where you have different groups of people. You have whites and Hispanics and blacks working together for a common cause, because it seems to me that they realize at the end of the day, there's only one group of people benefiting from this. It's the employers, and is the ones with the money. You know, the 1% group is the one benefiting from it. So as the union, we need to teach our members about this, because when you go to the cafeteria, in a shop, you see a group of Latinos together, you see the Haitians together, you see the Dominicans together, you see there's a big division there. And really, really, the future, the freedom that immigrants need in this country lies in the labor movement. And if we don't do our part, nothing will change. We're strong enough, though. I mean, we call it all of us brothers and sisters, and we need to mean it when we say it. So we can set good examples. Because if you preaching and then you don't practice, it doesn't mean a thing, because you have these members waiting on you, counting on the labor movement. And if we don't stick together, if we don't fight together, there's no way in hell we're gonna win together. When this thing happened with Floyd, I want to share with everyone about my daughter, who went to a school where she was being treated, excuse my expression, like trash, where she was being called all kinds of names. And they mistreated her mother because of her accent and everything, to a point where she had to stop going to school. But deep inside of me, I knew one day something will change. But what was missing was that link where all of us get together, whether we from Africa, whether we from South America, whether we from the Caribbean, all of us as one voice, and to work together towards the freedom that all of us need, the respect, the dignity that we deserve. We all need to work together on it. And this is where we at now. Um, I visit, we still out there. Our reps are there. We're visiting shops, we're talking to members. And if, again, if there's one thing that members are realizing these days, is that employers were never on their side. Because,
So let me
yes,
let
go ahead.
me let me say this, Joseph, because I think what you've put across is an amazing statement of potential, the potential to unite, the potential to work together. I think this moment really is one of us saying, how does that happen, and what is it that is inhibiting or prohibiting us to be able to work together? And I, at least for me, this moment, what this moment, both with the COVID and with the Black Lives Matter, is that it's like we got a new pair of glasses on. It's like we don't have to pretend or to cheerlead or to pat ourselves. I used to often say, enough with celebrating empty bags.
That's right.
What we're talking about is creating power and making change. And what you're presenting, Joseph, is precisely the kind of indignities that our families and our communities and workers have to suffer through just for going to school.
Yes.
And the challenge for us at this moment is, how do we make change? How do we, so I'm gonna let you finish, and then I think this is a great segue for us to move to talk about, well, how do we do this, right? How do we build power?
I think we all have to come together, Esther, and figure this out. Um, we know it's wrong. A lot of us in the labor movement, we know it's wrong. And the good thing is that we recognize that. And as long as we recognize it, then we can change it. We've had members coming to us and said, well, we don't like the way the police are treating people out there, police brutality. Where does union stand? So workers are talking. And if they talking and
that's the amazing thing of the moment, is everybody's talking.
Everybody
is talking about white supremacy.
Exactly.
Not just issue, not just one issue, but a system, a system that continues, and the best evidence of that is what is happening with this pandemic, right?
That's right.
It has exposed that our healthcare system is in the brink of collapse.
And Esther, at the end of the day, it's just the breathing. And it only takes a second for you to disappear, you know. And if people don't realize that, COVID-19, you know, really proves it to them, to everybody. Listen, today you can be doing all this trashing me and, you know, whatever, but, you know, it's a matter of time. You can disappear. And if you want to leave, I feel there's a writer who said, well, if you don't want to be forgotten the minute that you die, write something that is worth to be reading, to be read, or do something that is worth to be written. And this is the path that the labor movement needs to take. And
so that
like
is the challenge for the United Latinos. That is the challenge for the constituency groups. And that is the challenge for the American labor movement. That is the challenge for community members, for communities across America.
Yes.
How do we do exactly what you're talking about, Joseph, coming together? So I said, intentional about our leadership. Thought partners. How do we create thought partners? But let's, if you will, I'm going to move us a little bit
Yes.
to the next section of this, which is, I'm going to make a few comments, and then we'll hear from Rena and Martin and some other organizers out there. But let me start by saying that I often hear that demographics is not destiny. And I say, perhaps not. But demographics are ignored, denied, or distorted at our peril. The reality is that this country is and will continue to become more diverse. And white people are aging quickly. That's not Esther's opinion. Those are facts.
Fact.
They're facts that are not convenient to the political elite who don't want to scare the white liberal voter. They're facts that are not convenient to the not-for-profit sector who don't want their donors to feel threatened. And those are facts that are not convenient to union leaders who would rather not see the color of their membership.
Mm-hmm.
I also know that demographics shake the very foundation of the white supremacist movement, who are becoming increasingly aggressive and militant. And I know that politicians and policymakers too often distort demographics to channel resources to white communities. Chicago has made a science of it, sisters and brothers. So when we think about building power, I ask, who benefits when we deny, distort, or ignore those demographics in our unions or in our communities? How do you build a winning strategy? How do you assess racism in the workplace or in your community? How do we serve a diverse membership or build diverse leadership, develop authentic partnerships? What blind spots, or should I say, what dark holes do we create when the LGBTQ worker becomes invisible? When the refugee is ignored and the African American is fired, and women of color languish in the lowest paid jobs? I say demographics are essential to strategy.
Yes.
And it is pure and simple political constipation when we ignore, distort, or deny those demographics. So let me share a few points. First, I'm always amused by the framing that they use to describe workers. First, we were unskilled, then we were low wage. Now we're essential or non-essential.
Mm-hmm.
This hierarchy framing seems to me to serve only one purpose, and that's to devalue people's work. Evidently, store clerks were essential for only a few months. Meatpacking workers, not so much. About hairdressers, barbers, and salon workers, ask their families if those jobs are non-essential to them.
Mm-hmm.
My point is that all workers should be protected and all work should be valued. That we compromise our power when we accept the framing that some work does not deserve stability, good pay, dignity, and decent standards. But I digress. Let me share a few points about organizing and building power in our community. First and foremost, we must build from the bottom up. We must trust workers, parents, students, community residents. We must believe that the most effective strategies will come from those most impacted, that the most powerful strategies come from those who hope for better, who are most invested in solutions. The labor movement, and for that matter, the progressive movement, operate from a highly dependent on high-paid consultants, progressive elites, academics, philanthropy, and think tanks. They come in with their gimmicks and glossy presentations, fancy words, and metrics they pull from where the sun don't shine. And expect us, activists, expect you, staff, and workers to execute those ill-conceived strategies. But let me say something, failed strategies have consequences, and those most injured by these top-down strategies are too often people of color. Investments in top-down strategies have drained limited resources. Yes, those people have a role to play, but we cannot concede the power to determine strategy to those who have nothing to lose, who benefit financially regardless of devastating losses. In my experience, people of color in the movement do their work MacGyver style, con duct tape y bubble gum. Second is we must reject the deficit model, the notion that workers and community members are clients and that our folks need to be fixed, fueled by that hybrid dependence on professional elites, that we're incapable of identifying problems, finding solutions, making plans, and executing effectively. We need to adopt strategies that place workers as the primary problem solvers. As activists and leaders, we need to provide resources, create the space for us to use our voices, to share our knowledge, ensure that we and our community have a place at the table. Ya basta con los brokers. We need to be able to confront the powers that be directly, and we must create space for us to analyze our experiences and adjust and adapt our strategies. Now, I know this scares the shit out of many, but let's face it, the old way ain't working. We've been trying and trying and trying, and the old way ain't working. Even as they shove those strategies down our throats. So, what does it take to trust our own communities, our own members, to put them in a place where they can succeed? And finally, let me say this. I honestly believe that to build power, we must reject this issue by issue framing, moving from one issue to the next, or being stuck in issue purgatory. Rather, we need to build from a platform that intersects issues, communities, and connects the broadest base possible. It is only with an intersectional framework that we will find those places times and spaces to work with the African American community, to find common ground, to think together, to build together, to struggle together. Let's face it, the dominant narrative, and this is hard to say, but let's face it, the dominant narrative for the Latino community has relegated us to one issue, and that's just DACA. And while we are unwavering in our commitment to fight for young immigrants to be protected from deportation, we want more. We want a permanent protection for DACA and TPS recipients. We want to restore the political asylum system. We want refugees protected. And we must never, ever, ever let them forget about the 11 million undocumented. But we want more. We want African American, Latino, Asian, and Native American communities to have good jobs, trabajos dignos, universal daycare, and quality early childhood education, universal health care. I'm going to get real greedy now, and I'm going to say we want good schools. We want access to higher education and training programs. We need affordable housing, elder care, and transportation. We need green neighborhoods, free of toxic waste. We need real relief for our sisters and brothers in Puerto Rico. We need criminal justice reform. We need and we demand that the children and the families be released from those cages. Sisters and brothers, we're gonna get real, real gritty now. And you know what else we want? We want justice for Breonna Taylor. We want justice for a list that is too long to name here. And the many more that will remain unnamed. Sadly, friends, this is a true American tragedy and a grotesque injustice right in our face. So as Latino activists and leaders, we need to show political, corporations, and union leaders, the media in the country, that our agenda of justice will never fit in their pinky toe, and that our agenda will not hide in their sock drawer, that they will not relegate our vision of justice to the most narrow-minded framing of an issue. Again, this is a lot, yet so much more can be said and needs to be said. So I'm going to stop here, Rigo, and ask Rina and Martin to share a few thoughts about leading in this moment and building power in this moment.
Great. Rina and Martin are on. Just unmute yourselves and welcome to the Cafecito.
Hello.
Gracias, Rico. Hello. Well, yo estoy tomando una agua. Salud, salud. Primero que nada, Esther, un gusto volverla a ver. Dios sabe que me alegra mi corazón. La quiero con todo mi corazón. Quisiera decirle todo lo que siento por esto, pero no encuentro las palabras para agradecerle todo lo que para nosotros en la unión, en el labor movement, en the UFCW, United Latinos, and personally to me, mean to see you again. See the Esther Lopez que conocemos nosotros. I wish I can say it with the word that I want to say, but I will say that in private. So, so Esther, we are living in a very unprecedented times in our life, and unfortunately, our brothers and sisters on the packing plants and retail stores have been considered essential, and unfortunately, too, the government has lacked and provide protections to our brothers and sisters all across the industries, and we see hundreds of our brothers and sisters dying in the work, and also thousands and thousands of those get the virus, this daily virus, and the plants and the stores. And I think God put us in this position really to change the dynamics of the way we're going to engage more than ever, our brothers and sisters and the industries and the retail stores need us the most, because they need a voice. They need someone who's going to be raising and bringing light all those biggest concerns that they have. But I have a question for you, Esther. What would you think can we guide our younger group of Latinos and other brothers and sister minorities in the labor movement to do? How can we better engage? And I'm asking you because you've been instrumental to be where I'm at, to do what I do, to love what I do, and really engage and represent the best of my ability to my brothers and sisters in the labor movement. So I think you got the right words to came across to all those who they are seeing us in the webinar and also through social media.
Let me say this, Martin. I think this is where budgets and union budgets and government budgets and city budgets, budgets are nothing but priorities, right? They show where your priorities are. And so we can almost answer that with another question of where have we invested in young people? Where have we put not just palabras, not just words, but real structures and real resources around young people to be able to investigate and explore their own conditions, right? And the schools, unfortunately, what we've known is that we have not exactly been truthful about the history of this country. For once, we can actually say Columbus did not discover America. And so for us to create those opportunities for young people, pero que hablen, de veras. No, not another conference where you sit there for 3 days and people talk at you. Not another one of those glossy presentations, but to have a real investment in hearing voices. And I would say to you that it's not only young people, that it's women of color, that it's workers of color, that we have just so invested so little in creating those spaces, workers of color. There has not been an investment or a strategy. And what we need to do, and this is the opportunity we have now. When I say the opportunity of this moment, is you have young people now that are either themselves watching their parents die in meatpacking plants or watching their families become sick, or fearful that they themselves will become sick and die. Where are we creating those spaces for people to explore that seriousness of an issue in our workplace? I think there's a lot that needs to be done to engage young people, but I would say that how do we present and frame issues that bring the broadest base forward? Some of those, I say for me, some of us that are, let's say, not viejitos, but mature, shall we say, we still got a lot of fight in us. We still have a lot of fight in us. How do we bring us in? So it's because you're intentional and because we're investing. Ya se acabó el tiempo de puras palabras bonitas. Now's the time where we put real investment and real thoughtfulness. I've seen your work, Martin, and the one thing, I can say a lot about your work, but the one thing I know about your work, Martin, is how you've reached out to that refugee community in your membership in the plants. I've seen how you've respected those women, those refugee women. You fought for them to be able to express themselves culturally and religiously in those plants. I've seen you do that. And we have to continue that kind of commitment with young people with women of color, with women. And look, I know it's hard to hear, and this is kind of, this brings us to this all lives matter versus Black lives matter. But we have to say it. We have to say women of color. We have to say African American. We have to say it now. We can't be deteniéndonos. So I say real strategies, real investment in those groups. And that means that resources get allocated, which this is really where the rubber meets the road, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where resources get, porque a nosotros, yes, like I say, MacGyver, con duct tape y bubble gum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bubble gum. All right, thank you. I hope that gets to a little bit to your point. I've seen your work. I took a drive from Dodge City to Oklahoma, and I walked into your plant. But I've also known that you've invested, Martin. You've invested both your time and money.
Muchas gracias, Esther.
Las palabras no cuentan a este punto. Rina,
No, claro que no. Le agradezco de corazón su guía, su entendimiento, y la orientación que nos ha dado a muchos. Usted es uno de los cimientos de muchos de los que estamos en el movimiento laboral, latinos y minorías. So what can I say? You want being the foundation for many of us in the labor movement, minorities of color. I know you have a lot of institutional knowledge, but you know what? You have the big heart to move masses forward. We've seen that, and we miss you a lot. What can I say? We miss you every single day. You know that. We love you.
Thank you, Martin. I love
Gracias,
you too.
Esther.
Rina.
Esther, ¿cómo estás? Tan bueno de verte. You look beautiful.
Thank you.
You know, it's.
Share with us a little bit about where you're at, what you're thinking.
Yeah, you know, the thing that has really been weighing on me, and as an organizer, but also just as a person, as a human being, is that, you know, we see it in the news. We know the numbers that Latinos have been disproportionately impacted by the coronavirus. You know, the first panel that we did here, this United Latinos panel, was a bunch of United Latino leaders from different locals sharing about the impact in meatpacking. You know, I think we see it every day because it impacts the members, because in meatpacking is where a lot of the Latinos work. It's just the majority of the workforce in a lot of places are Latino, and you know, they call them, right, the government calls them essential workers, but really what it feels like is disposable workers. And it's unacceptable, and it's been weighing on me a lot these last several months. You know, and I hear from workers, and I talk to workers from the non-union packing plants during this pandemic, and the one story that really sticks out to me, it actually makes me a little bit emotional even, is that, you know, it was around Mother's Day, and I have, you know, and I'm still, I have young kids, but I talked to this worker very close to Mother's Day, and he Latino, undocumented, works at a non-union plant, and he got infected. He got infected with coronavirus, and he brought it home to his wife, and his wife was pregnant, and she gave birth. You know, she gave birth with the symptoms. So she became a new mother around Mother's Day, laboring with coronavirus. And it really, like, talking to him just really impacted me, because, you know, here's this man who's becoming a new father. His wife is becoming a new mother. He's infected. He brought it to her from the plant. It's non-union, you know, it's non-union. So they did none of the things that OSHA or the government recommends.
And he's worried about coming forward and even telling his story because he's afraid of losing his job because he has, you know, because of his status, because he's disposable, because he doesn't have a union, he doesn't have agency, he doesn't have a voice to stand up for him in the workplace. And his story, I think, is very common. It's super common about what's happening right now. And to juxtapose that around the time that right now, knowing that Latinos are becoming a larger and larger share of the new Americans that make up our country, and in our communities, in our workplaces, in our membership. And it is the time, as you say right now, to be bold and to lead as a union and for workers, because I think this man and his story is what it's like right now to be a Latino working person in non-union places. And we have to, in this moment, stand with them and be with them and lead and be bold and take the risks so that we don't look back on this 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now and say, we had an opportunity in this moment and we didn't take it because we were afraid. And so it's been weighing on me a lot, the story and what's going on. And, you know, I'm really glad that I get a chance to talk to you and to ask you, you know, what are your thoughts or your vision or your hope for what we do as United Latinos, that we have this moment in time to use this power, to use this platform to organize and to make this change so that we're not in this place when we move forward. Because all I can think about is that, you know, this would have been my parents. This would have been their experience. And I don't want that to be for somebody else.
So so, you know, these are hard. When I said, I think about you guys every day. That's exactly what I'm talking about, because I know you guys are facing that and talking to workers in desperate pain every day. So this is what are both strategies for our union that move us? How do we connect with movements that are exposing the absolute failure of our government in this pandemic? This is how are we using our own voices? And it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of investment. But I'll tell you, we need to move beyond the narrative and into a strategy. We use that narrative and we work with those workers in order to build that strategy. But I'll tell you, Rena, there is just too much pain, too many of those workers all over the country, all over the world. And so the question for me is, what are we doing different? What are we doing? How are we organizing different? And I'm afraid I've been given the nod that we are really tight on time. So Rico, if I could just make a closing statement, I promise it won't take too long. And Rena, I'd love to continue this conversation about what those strategies could really look like, because those narratives are powerful and those experiences are real for our members. But let me just close by saying this, and then we'll open it up. And I can already hear it. She sounds angry. But I'll tell you, I have cried for babies ripped from their mama's arms. I grieved for Laquan McDonald, a 16-year-old who was shot in the back not far from my house in Chicago. It hurts to know that every day children are being sexually abused in detention centers. And yes, it makes me madder than hell that meatpacking workers are dying from COVID. I will not deny what's in my heart. But do not underestimate the capacity of your heart. As difficult as it has been, my heart has a great capacity for hope. And watching John Lewis pass that baton over to the Black Lives Matter movement filled my heart with hope. Watching Kim Cordova on CNN defend meatpacking workers fills my heart with hope. Be assured, sisters and brothers, that my ideas are not merely emotional, that they're assembled from astute observation, from direct and indirect experience, from study and from rational thought. And it is with the deepest respect and with great humility that I share them with you. Let me end by saying the mistakes are all mine, and should not be attributed to the United Latinos of the UFCW. Thank you, Rena, Jean, Joseph, and Martin. Thank you, Rigo. We started this conversation with where do we stake our future, and I say in absolute unity with the Black Lives Matter movement and with those who will join the struggle against white supremacy. Let me say, stay safe, sisters and brothers, and take care of each other. Muchas gracias. Rigo, it's all yours.
Gracias, Esther. It's not mine, it's always yours. But we have a couple of folks that have had their hands up. We're gonna take them in order. If you wanna ask questions, we have just a little bit of time. We're gonna start with Pedro Albarran. He is a meatpacking worker at Farmer John, and we're gonna promote him to the panel. And then after that, we're gonna move to Luis Lopez from RWDSU. I think that they both have questions for you, Esther. Pedro, you're on mute. If you can just unmute your phone. Muy bien. Sí, Pedro.
Buenas tardes a todos. Espero que la estén pasando bien. Un gusto de verlos a cada uno de ustedes. Que da gusto volverlos a mirar, aunque sea por video. Todos juntos estamos enfrentando esta pandemia, los ataques de los supervisores en las plantas. Por todos lados está un poquito complicado. Lo que yo he mirado en mi trabajo ahorita, que es que nos han estado aislando, han estado dividiendo a los trabajadores en las mesas, y es un poco más difícil tener comunicación entre los compañeros. Inclusive han llegado al punto de llevar guardias de seguridad para cuidarnos, y nos están molestando que no estemos cerca. A veces tomamos distancia, pero aún así han estado molestando. Pero ahorita disminuyó un poco eso, pero aún así de todos modos es un poquito más difícil. Me gustaría saber el punto de vista de Esther o Rigo también. Saber que ahorita es más difícil de la comunicación en persona. ¿Qué herramientas como para tener más comunicación y enfrentar este problema, sabiendo que siempre es difícil, pero ahorita está un poquito más? Entonces me gustaría saber qué herramientas podría uno usar.
Gracias, Pedro. Yo creo que esta situación se va a poner hasta más y más difícil entre más le entramos a este punto. Pero creo que son ustedes los mismos trabajadores con el unión, con el sindicato, que tenemos que buscar soluciones para eso, para todas las condiciones que nos impiden de comunicarnos unos con los otros. Yo diría que el local, el 770, tiene que desarrollar, debemos desarrollar Mira, no es crítica, ¿no? Es de veras sentarnos a pensar qué está haciendo la compañía y cómo es que debemos actuar como trabajadores y como sindicato. Pero yo diría que esta es parte de la estratégica para luchar por la protección de los trabajadores, ¿no? Y el local 770 tiene que estar enfrente, en medio, proveyendo los recursos y las herramientas necesarias para que ustedes puedan comunicarse con uno con los otros. Y yo sé que no es fácil, pero sin tener una manera intencional, no se va a hacer. Rigo, no de crítica. Solo quiero decir que Pedro nos ha presentado una situación y creo que tenemos que responder directamente de cómo se soluciona esta situación, ¿no?
Sí, por supuesto. Yo creo que Pedro está preguntando una pregunta a la cual él sabe la respuesta. Nosotros en el local 770 tenemos un concilio de trabajadores de los empaques que están desarrollando su misma estrategia y sus mismas ideas de cómo ellos quieren combatir el COVID en su trabajo. Parte de eso es obvio utilizar las agencias que el gobierno tiene, que hasta este momento han sido ineficaces, ¿verdad? Hemos empezado a enlazarnos con nuestros compañeros, incluyendo a Pedro y muchos de sus compañeros, porque en su planta de Pedro ha habido mucha gente que ha salido positiva. Un entrenamiento en cómo ellos pueden empezar a denotar, a usar una herramienta para que ellos detecten los problemas y vayan directamente con los supervisores a que se arregle. Esa planta desafortunadamente ha hecho muy poco, muy tarde, y se ha derramado el virus profundamente en esa planta. Pero a lo largo, la comunicación que se está llevando a cabo ahorita es virtual y los entrenamientos con los trabajadores son virtuales y están pasando semanalmente. Y no sé si quiera Pedro opinar sobre lo que acabo de decir.
Let me ask this question, because this is the challenge that I put in front of all of us, okay? Is the critique about the national response, about the response to COVID, is that there is no national strategy. So I ask, what is the union strategy? What is the overall strategy? See, this is where we're pushing big and pushing bold, right? What is the national plan to protect meatpacking workers, and what is being built and developed? And I'm not saying, again, I'm really just pushing us to be bolder, to be stronger. So that's what I mean, is that we can all easily say there is no national plan to protect the American public.
And
so given that, what is the national labor plan?
I want to, Esther,
yes.
Send it back to Pedro to close. Maybe he has a couple closing comments, but I do agree with you that we do need a national plan. And the reality is that right now, the resources for stopping the promulgation of the virus, not just within meatpacking plants or with essential workers, but in Latino communities, is not there.
That's right.
So what we're doing inside our meatpacking plants is a Band-Aid compared to what we need to be doing out in our communities, what we need to be doing, again, as as a nation to protect the weakest, most vulnerable people and the most susceptible people to the pandemic. I'm gonna turn it back to Pedro, 2 seconds to close, and then we're gonna go to Luis.
Sí, gracias, Rigo. Bueno, sí, lo que quiero decir es que el local se ha estado movilizando en conjunto con nosotros. Hicimos una campaña de publicidad usando los medios para dar entrevistas, para decir lo que está pasando dentro de la planta de la comunidad. Y ha sido algo muy grande porque nos ha dado poder y la compañía ha estado cediendo porque siente presión de la comunidad, saber que ellos saben lo que pasa. Entonces, esa es una parte. Y la otra es que las agencias de gobierno han estado yendo a la planta, incluyendo el Departamento de Salud del Condado de Los Ángeles, los de Cal OSHA, y Cal OSHA ha ido 4 veces a la planta, y por supuesto que la compañía se pone furiosa con eso, ¿verdad? Y me ha tocado estar en una ocasión, 2 ocasiones en la delegación de OSHA adentro, y la compañía ahorita está, los de management están, pero al rojo vivo, ¿verdad? Entonces, claro que les está doliendo, pero digo, es parte de lo que uno puede hacer. Gracias.
Gracias a ti, Pedro, y sigue luchando. Eres un gran líder en tu planta.
Gracias, Pedro.
De nada, Esther, a ti también. Ustedes.
Okay, Esther, we have Luis Lopez from the RWDSU.
Hey, Esther, how you doing?
I am doing well. How are you, my brother?
How you doing, my sister? I'm so proud to see you. Rigo, you too. Hey, I'm sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulty. We got hit by a storm out here in the East Coast. But listen, this is a great conversation, and you guys are doing a great job. And I think it's very important that we continue the effort that we're doing. As a union, we gotta continue fighting all these companies that are not helping our Latinos brothers and sisters in the shops. And I think that's an imperative conversation that we should have. And we at the RW, we're doing everything we can. We're hustling and out there hitting the streets and hitting our plants where we lost almost 10 to 15 members at numerous plants in the South. And I think we're doing a great job pushing it. And Esther, you're right. We gotta hold them accountable. And we as union organizers have to do whatever it takes to make this the fight up front so our membership understands what we're dealing with. Look, we all come out of the shops. I came out of the shop. Joseph tells his story. You know, we all come from within, and we have to keep the push on helping our members with this COVID situation that we have going on. And I think that's exactly what we need to have to make this an issue that everybody sees. And I think you guys are doing a great job with this. And I'm proud to be on with you guys.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you for what you do. Rigo, I think he said what he needed to say, and that's, I'll turn it back over to you.
Perfect. Actually, first, we want to hear some words from Martin Rosas, Secretary Treasurer of the United Latinos, before we close.
Well, for for this and many times throughout this night, Esther mentioned this is very intentional on trying to get all of us with
Hey, Martin, you went into robot mode. So maybe you want to turn off your video and then say what you want to say, because I don't think anybody speaks robot.
And you hear me? Okay, no?
I think we can hear you better now. No, Rena, what do you think?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, Rigo, first and foremost, I want to thank you and congratulate you for these webinars. Esther mentioned in more than one occasion being intentional from the get-go. When you become president of United Latinos, your goal always been to provide all of us with a level of education. And this is one of those things that being intentional. This is my career. I always believe that you have to be intentional in everything you do. And this is one of those facts. You're very intentional, providing us with this opportunity to have Esther Lopez in our webinar. Hey, I cannot thank you enough for that. But more than anything, we want to invite all our brothers and sisters for the next webinar that we're planning to have. We will communicate that throughout the social media and text messaging, whichever way we have available to us. And one thing I want to say, I learned this the hard way. I'm not going to let any politician or any other leaders to define our future. The labor movement, the new blood, the old blood on this movement has a lot of fire in their belly still. And I think this is a momentum that we should seize and take advantage of, because our members, our brothers and sisters, everywhere they need is the most now. And they don't have no one else who can defend their needs but the labor movement. So we're fortunate to be where we at, and we need to seize on this moment and help them. And Rigo, Esther, and all of us in this conference, I want to thank everyone. And brother, ¿qué más te puedo decir? Es ser intencional, eso es lo que es hacer esto, hacer webinars para que nosotros podamos obtener mejor educación y seguir creciendo como movimiento laboral, independientemente del color de nuestra piel. Lo que nos sale a todos es el mismo color de la sangre y tenemos que unirnos hoy más que nunca. Gracias, Rigo. Gracias, Esther. Con eso, Rigo, te lo dejo a ti para que cierres nuestro webinar.
Gracias, Martín. Before closing the webinar, I want to make a pitch for everyone to download our app. You can take a picture of the screen on the left if you're Android, on the right if you're Apple. Just take a snapshot of that and download the newest version of our app. Our app is newly redesigned, and so is our website, is being built to mirror it. So we understand that we are not going to be able to see each other for a while. And so we want to make sure that we're able to communicate with each other. So we put all of our resources on an app and are mirroring them on our website as we speak. So download the app. That's my commercial pitch. And now just to close it off, I want to say to Esther, I've known Esther for 20 years. I met Esther when she gave me the gruesome assignment of riding a bus across the United States. As a matter of fact, I rode that bus with Rena across the United States, and to build a vibrant, multiracial, multicultural, representative coalition to support the riding of that bus across the United States out of the San Francisco Bay Area. And it was the most life-changing experience I've ever had. And just to say that from that moment on, I grew not just to love, but to esteem and revere the wisdom that Esther gave so freely. Esther mentored anyone that wanted to be mentored, and I'm proud to be one of her proteges. And I would just say this, that the intentionality of this group of the United Latinos of the UFCW comes from directly the influence of Esther and the mentorship that she had on every single one of us. And so what you see here today, this leadership of this group comes from that. And so we will take your advice and your counsel as we move forward into this great unknown, and change the lives of our members, change the history of our country, move to eradicate white supremacy, and fight for socioeconomic justice for all workers. Thank you so much, Esther, for all that you've given us every single day of your career as a teacher and as an organizer, and as an organizing teacher and as a teaching organizer. Thank you so much, Esther.
Los quiero un chingo.
Y con eso, ¿se puede?
Sí se puede.
Sí se puede. ¿Se puede?
Sí se puede. Sí, se puede.
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 All right.